Since my last video, where I shared the news that Nigeria is to make changes to its travel protocols, effective Monday the 4th of April. Many of you have been throwing questions my way, questions that I've been unable to answer because I did not have the information, the government hadn't shared the information, but all that changes today. And my hope is I'll be able to answer all your questions that you've been itching to get answers for. If it's your first time seeing my face, my name is Sassy Funke, and I'm a Nigerian travel and lifestyle content creator, really creating to help Nigerians and Africans travel better and smarter. If that's something that you think you might benefit from, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, and also give this video a huge thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers, and you guys can make it happen for me. So let's get straight into the official document as shared by the Nigerian government. Right, so this is the document here. It says Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19, Office of the Secretary of the Government of the Federation. It's dated the 2nd of April 2022. The title is the COVID-19 Response, the Provisional Travel Protocol for Travelers Arriving in Nigeria. So this first page has a quick summary of the gist of the protocol. And I'm going to actually dive in specifically later on. And maybe what I'm going to do is create like a chapters so that you can easily jump, like a table of contents in the description box below, so you can easily jump to go and read specific parts, right? I think that'll be very helpful. So let me dive straight into sort of the core information that you have to know with regard to the main changes on this travel protocol. It states this protocol is a revision of the travel protocol released on the 29th of November 2021. Interim travel guidelines for passengers arriving in Nigeria. It has 5 points under this. The first point states inbound passengers to Nigeria who are fully vaccinated against COVID-19 are no longer required to carry out a COVID-19 PCR test before boarding Nigeria-bound flights. What does this mean? If you're fully vaccinated and you're going to Nigeria, you do not need to do that 48-hour test anymore. Point 2, it states fully vaccinated passengers arriving in Nigeria will also not be required to carry out post-arrival PCR tests or a rapid antigen test upon arrival in Nigeria. This means that you don't have to do any day 2 tests anymore. It also states that you don't have to do a rapid antigen test anymore, which is really weird because when they made the announcement a week or 2 weeks ago, they made an announcement to say that fully vaccinated travelers have to do an antigen test at the airport. Maybe they've seen that that's actually not feasible and it's very unrealistic, right, given operations at our airports, so they scrapped that. So good to know that rapid test is no longer in the picture for fully vaccinated travelers, which makes sense. Point 3, it states children below the age of 18 years will be accorded the same privileges, right, as persons who are fully vaccinated. So if your child's below 8, right, if your child is below 18, you get the same, you have to do the same thing as fully vaccinated travelers, right? Number 4, inbound passengers who are unvaccinated or partially vaccinated for COVID-19 shall take a COVID-19 PCR test 48 hours before departure and undergo day 2 and day 7 tests at their own cost. So nothing has changed for unvaccinated or partially vaccinated. And I'm sure a lot of you have been asking questions around how many doses is it? That comes up. I'll clarify that in later on in this video. Point 5, it states all inbound passengers must register via the online Nigeria International Travel Portal. That's the NITP portal at nitp.ncdc.gov.uk.ng. So another question many of you guys have been asking me is that do fully vaccinated travelers still have to register? They're saying everybody, regardless of vaccination status, has to register on the portal. Then it goes on to talk about outbound guidelines. It states all passengers traveling out of Nigeria. 3 points here. It states 1, encouraged, right? Passengers are encouraged to have evidence of a full vaccination against COVID-19. Encouraged is not mandatory. So if you don't have, it's okay. Point 2, comply with the COVID-19 guidelines of their destination or transit countries and to familiarize themselves with the COVID-19 travel requirements of their destination and transit countries before embarking on the journey. So Essentially what they're saying here is that it's important for you to know what the rules are for transiting, what the rules are for your destination country, and make sure you've done whatever tests or requirements that you need to do for those countries. So that is pretty much the juice, like the core of the changes in the protocols, right? Now this is like specific, going into depth, right? Guidelines for inbound passengers. A, pre-departure from country of exit. So what are the things that you have to do pre-departure to go into that in depth? Pre-boarding. It states step 1, pre-boarding COVID-19 PCR test. It states that passengers with evidence of full vaccination, right? This requirement, the requirement to have a pre-boarding test, is waived for passengers who are fully vaccinated. Passengers who are not able to show evidence of full vaccination will be treated as unvaccinated / partially vaccinated under this protocol, right? Now, what does vaccinated mean, unvaccinated? It says full vaccinations for COVID-19 refers to a person who has received 2 doses, right, of any of the following COVID-19 vaccines at least 2 weeks before the date of travel. So Pfizer, Moderna, Oxford, AstraZeneca, Sputnik, all the other ones that are listed, so you guys can see it right here. It says persons who received only 1 dose of these ones are not considered as fully vaccinated, right? Or it says that if you've had a single dose of the Janssen or the Sputnik Light, you're considered fully vaccinated. Hope that makes sense. Point B, it states passengers who do not have evidence of full vaccination, right? It states here, travelers must perform a COVID-19 PCR test not more than 2 days or 48 hours before boarding. 48 hours, don't look at that 2 days, because 2 days can be deceptive. PCR test done more than 48 hours before departure is not valid, and persons will not be allowed to board. Rapid antigen or antibody tests, again, they're still not acceptable for travel to Nigeria. Only PCR tests can be used for this purpose. Test validity commences from the time of sample collection. For travelers with multiple connections before arrival in Nigeria, the PCR test must be valid 48 hours from the first point of departure. Travelers must bring along an electronic or hard copy of the negative COVID PCR test for presentation at the airport on departure and also upon arrival in Nigeria. So have your COVID test like handy with you when traveling. Step 2, it states the completion of health declaration form. All travelers must register via the NITP portal and proceed to fill the online declaration and self-reporting form. They should ensure that the information is correct, have the right numbers, and all that. Step 3, it states that uploading COVID-19 negative PCR test results. Again, it states this only applies to unvaccinated or partially vaccinated passengers, right? After filling the online health form, travelers will be directed to upload their negative COVID-19 PCR test onto the portal. Once this is successfully done, travelers will proceed to the payment section of the travel portal. Travelers are advised to bring along an electronic or hard copy of their negative COVID-19 PCR test for presentation at the airport. Step 4, it states the payments for the COVID-19 PCR test on day 2 and day 7 post-arrival. Again, this applies only to partially vaccinated or unvaccinated travelers. On reaching the payment section of the portal, travelers will be requested to select their preferred lab based on where they'll be isolating for the period of 7 days in Nigeria. A list of accredited private labs, sample collection centers across the country are available on the portal. The next stage is to choose the payment gateway and proceed to pay for day 2 and day 7, right? Many of you have argued with me about this day 2, day 7, right? Day 2 is arrival day plus 1 day. Arrival day is day 1. The next day is day 2, right? It's odd for Nigeria compared to other countries, but that's just the way it is. And day 7 is similarly, arrival day is day 1, and 6 days after is day 7, right? Plus 6 days after. It said, please note that travelers that are paying in Naira should use cards issued by a Nigerian bank, right? Passengers who select the bank transfer option should take note that a 48-hour period may be needed to complete the transaction. So basically, this doesn't make sense, because if it, for example, it takes 48 hours to complete the transaction, you might not get your QR code quick enough to actually fly. So I would advise you do not use the bank transfer option, just in case it takes that long. Step 5, it says permit to travel QR code. For fully vaccinated passengers. Following completing the health declaration form, fully vaxxed passengers should proceed to print out the permit to travel / QR code at the top right corner of the portal and save and print the form for presentation at the point of boarding. You have to actually have a QR code to board. For unvaccinated or partially vaccinated travelers, following the successful completion of the NITP and the payment for the repeat post-arrival PCR test, passengers should download the permits and QR code using the same way, right? It goes on to say that the permit to travel certificate or QR code will have a paid label if payment is successful, and unpaid label if payment had not gone through yet or isn't successful, right? A copy of the permit to travel certificate will be sent to the email address provided by the traveler. So that's why it's good to have the right email address, so you get that to your email too. Point 2, big point 2, boarding. Number 1, prior to boarding for Nigeria, travelers must present 2 documents at their point of departure to be allowed to board. For fully vaccinated passengers, it says you need 2 things. A verifiable full vaccination certificate with a valid security mark. So a vax certificate that one can actually verify, you need that. Second thing you need is a permit to travel certificate or QR code. B, for unvaccinated or partially vaccinated passengers, these are the things that you need. It says you need a negative COVID-19 PCR test done within 48 hours. I'm not going to say 2 days because 2 days just sounds deceitful again. 48 hours of departure. Airlines have been instructed not to board passengers with non-PCR COVID tests such as antibody or antigen test, a positive COVID-19 PCR test, or done beyond 48 hours of boarding. They need to stop saying this 2 days because it's going to confuse many people. You guys scrap the 2 days, it's 48 hours. And B, unvaxxed people need to provide a paid permit to travel QR code. Passengers who fail to show a paid, so if it's not showing paid, will not be allowed to board. Point C, airlines that board travelers without the appropriate required documents, vaccine certificates, a negative COVID-19 PCR test done not more than 48 hours prior to boarding, and a paid permit to travel QR code at airlines that don't follow the rules. People that are not Nigerians will be refused entry into Nigeria and basically deported back to their country, wherever they're coming from. Nigerians that allowed entry or permanent residents will be subjected, outlined in D below. In addition, travelers arriving with 4 documents shall be prosecuted and required to do a PCR test day 2 and 7. Airlines will be fined $3,500 per passenger. Yeah, all that's there. So what happens on arrival in Nigeria? You know what, guys? I'm going to make sure to leave the link of this document so you can read it thoroughly at your own time and pace, whenever at your leisure, basically. I'll leave it in the description box of this video. So on arrival in Nigeria, it states that all travelers are required to strictly adhere to instructions given by the Port Health Services at the arrival terminal. Travelers who fail to adhere to instructions will be sanctioned by relevant security personnel. All travelers arriving in Nigeria will be required to do, so this is what's going to happen when you arrive in Nigeria. Go through the routine Port Health screening and present electronic or printout evidence of a pre-boarding COVID test if you're unvaccinated, permit to travel certificate, or vaccination certificate for fully vaccinated travelers. All travelers are required to present their international passports for clearance through immigration. If unvaxxed or partially vaccinated, proceed on a mandatory 7-day self-isolation in their selected in-country. So basically, go home wherever you're meant to be. Point 4, travelers who are fully vaccinated are not required to observe 7-day quarantine or take any tests on arrival. Unvaxxed or partially vaccinated travelers are to show up at the lab. So basically, if you're unvaxxed or partially vaccinated, you have to show up at the lab on day 2 and day 7 test. Unvaxxed or partially vaccinated persons who test negative after 7 days can exit self-isolation, but if you test positive, you'll be treated according to the measures instituted by the government, right? See, this is long, guys. Note, travelers, partially vaccinated or unvaccinated travelers only, who fail to show up on their day 2 or day 7. So if you're unvaxxed and you didn't do your day 2, day 7 test, they'll send you reminders for you to follow up, right? It then goes on to say that travelers, unvaxxed, people again who fail to show up for testing, will have travel restrictions placed on their passports for at least 6 months and will not be able to travel abroad during that period, right? Non-Nigerian passport holders will have their visas revoked and deported from the country. Test results will be provided within 24 hours and the state's health department will be informed. If test results is not received after 24 hours, you can contact the lab yourself to get those results. Point 4, persons unvaxxed or partially vaxxed who test negative after 7 days shall end self-isolation on receipt of their results, but must continue to self-monitor for up to 14 days. Point 5 says persons partially vaccinated or unvaxxed, again, who test negative for COVID-19 after the post-day 2 test must continue to observe non-pharmaceutical interventions, wearing masks and all that. Point 6, all travelers reporting or developing symptoms of COVID-19 on arrival in Nigeria or during screening will not be allowed to self-isolate and will be placed into institutional quarantine. So basically, if you arrive in Nigeria and you're showing symptoms of COVID-19, they're going to put you into government quarantine. Persons unvaxxed, again, who test positive for COVID-19 after day 2, day 7 test shall be managed based on the national guidelines for COVID-19 treatment. Okay, point D, we're getting close to the end, guys. Procedure for travelers arriving without a valid PCR result. All travelers, the unvaxxed, on arriving in Nigeria without a valid COVID-19 PCR result, right, or a forged one or antibody one, will be subjected to the following measures. So if you have a fake test, you don't have the right test, this is what's going to happen to you. If you're holding a foreign passport or you're non-resident in Nigeria, they're going to deny you and send you back. Point 2, for Nigerian and foreign passport holders with residency rights, A, Port Health Services will screen the traveler to include a temperature check and review the health questionnaire to establish infectability risk. B, travelers will be escorted by Port Health and security personnel to a designated quarantine for mandatory quarantine for 7 days at your expense, so you have to pay for that. Point C, travelers' passports will be collected by relevant authorities and will not be released. So basically, they're going to take your passport from you and only release it after you finish the mandatory quarantine. Point D, a COVID-19 PCR test will be conducted by a designated private lab within 24 hours of arrival at the facility at the expense of the traveler. If the result is positive, the traveler will be transferred to an isolation facility and managed according to the national treatment guidelines. If it's negative, passenger will continue the mandatory isolation in the facility until a 7-day PCR test is done. Finally, point E, guidelines for outbound passengers. It pretty much states here that all passengers traveling out of Nigeria are encouraged to have taken a full vaccination against COVID-19 and comply with the testing requirements of the destination and transit countries. Travelers are to familiarize themselves with the COVID-19 requirements of the country they're traveling to before embarking on the journey, as always. It goes on to state that this protocol comes into effect at 12:01 a.m. on Monday, the 4th of April 2022. Point F, it says review of protocol. This protocol shall be reviewed in 4 weeks, right? They're basically saying here that after 4 weeks, they're going to look at the protocol and see if they're going to make changes to it or not, but this is going to be valid for the next 4 weeks, right? And this has been signed by the boss, Mustafa, the Secretary of the Government of the Federation, Chairman of the PSC on COVID-19. Wow, guys, that was a lot. Super exciting that we're moving forward with regard to COVID and all the money we've been spending on tests, right? We're thankful for that. I really hope you guys had a lot of clarity with this video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. Gosh, guys, if you made it here, because it's a super, as in I spoke a lot, leave a comment and say, Sassy, we made it. Yes, because we made it here together. Thank you so much for your love and support. I appreciate, you guys. You guys have been following me on TikTok. The family has been growing. Just thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new. Don't forget to give this video a huge thumbs up, and I will see you on my next video. Bye.